So, Arash, we had some Canadian football news drop on Tuesday. News that we expected, but we didn't necessarily want to hear. We already knew that training camps were not going to happen on time, and those were scheduled to be May 11th and May 17th in terms of the start dates. The season, which was scheduled for June 11th, long gone are the days where the CFL season started on July 1st. Well, that won't be happening either. We heard from Randy Ambrosi, CFL commissioner, today. That news to you, it's really not a surprise, but why are we hearing this now?
Well, I think it's just a matter of, okay, let's now let everybody know where things stand, and then planning and preparing for all your different scenarios. Now you know that training camp and the season, the start date can only be a certain time. And Donnovan, I've been told that coaches have been preparing for only 7-day training camps rather than closer to 3 weeks. They may only have one preseason game, if at all, rather than the conventional 2. And it's also to just let fans know who may have plans, may have ideas, and the players know, hey, we're pushing this ahead. Look, half the players are coming from other countries. I have to say that plural now. They're just not coming from the States. They have the global quotient with players from Mexico and from Europe. And so there's an understanding that, okay, it's going to be at least July. But Donnovan, to be quite honest with you, I don't foresee a scenario where the CFL is going to start a season, if they play it all in 2020, until Labor Day. I mean, that's when you think about the border, when you think about the public health announcements that have come so far, and likely what's ahead, it's still miles to go before there's even a thought of playing professional football in our country.
You mentioned the players and the fact that they come from different countries. They all want to get paid, though. That they have in common. And as you know, they're all starting to ask if and when are they going to get paid. Language in the CBA, language really matters in these cases. The term suspend. I noticed Adam Silver, when he spoke of his league, he used the term hiatus, which I found very interesting.
Yes.
The term suspend, what does that mean in terms of what, if anything, the players can expect in terms of dollars from the league during the season?
Well, let's look at this from 2 fronts. First of all, let's say you're one of the wealthier players in the league, upper middle class, if you will, not the quarterbacks, not the entry level. You may have signed a contract for around a base salary of $180,000. Or if you are in the lower middle class, you may have signed a contract that pays you around $90,000. So the way you get paid in the Canadian Football League and in pro football, period, for those who don't know, is you get paid weekly. So because it's an 18-game season, you will get paid 1/18 of your salary each game. And there are no guaranteed contracts in pro football, so at any time, a team can cut you. So if you're getting paid $180,000 or $90,000, I pick those figures because it's either $5,000 a week or $10,000 a week. That would be your weekly game check. You're not going to make any of your contract at all if you're not playing football. And if you're only going to have, say, a 9-game season, you're only going to get 1/9 of half of that salary. So from a base salary standpoint, that's where things are. Now, yesterday, and I think this is what you're alluding to, Donnovan, our friend Justin Dunk dropped a story that in the standard player agreement, standard player contract, in paragraph 16, it states that if the league is suspended, if there's a suspension of operations, the contracts become null and void. So I've made some calls on this, and what the league stance on this is, we protected ourselves in case the league went insolvent, in case a team folded. You know, you have to go back not that long ago, 15 years ago, the Ottawa Renegades folded. They protected themselves to say, we don't owe players anything in case that happens. Well, suspension just happened today. Suspension just happened that there is not going to be pro football until at least July. Now, does that mean contracts become null and void? It depends what your interpretation of suspension means. And you can believe that the league office and the owners, their idea of suspension is one thing, and the Players Association and agents, their idea of suspension is something else.
The interesting thing for me is those divergent ideas should be talking now about getting on the same page in a way, the way we saw in Major League Baseball, where the PA and the league proactively had conversations about different scenarios and what they're going to do, because neither side, from my reading, can afford literally a long drawn out legal battle to settle this issue. And,
Yeah,
and
I don't think there's going to be a legal battle here. I would suspect that eventually there's going to be an agreement between both sides where the league is going to have to give a couple of concessions to the players, and the Players Association is going to say, okay, well, we'll meet in the middle here, unless there is enough noise made by the majority of the players. And the majority of the players don't make a lot of the money. The majority of the players are in the lower middle class or the lower class. There's very few players outside of quarterbacks making big money who say, hold on, we want to go and we want to push this agenda. Because if you're not making any money right now, the only way that you're going to get cash in your pocket is if you get some kind of signing bonus. And the only way you're getting a signing bonus is if you end up becoming a free agent. Now, I think that's going way down the line. I still think calmer and saner heads will prevail. But you talk about being proactive on this. Donnovan, the issue with the CFL for so many years, and it continues to be, is that they are a reactive league and a reactive organization, to the point where I called 3 different organizations yesterday, just before Dunk's story dropped, about paragraph 16 in the player contract agreement, and they didn't know anything about it. So maybe at the league office side and the PA, they were talking. I was led to believe that was the case, although they probably want me to believe that that was the case. But I can tell you from the team side, at least a third of the organizations in the league and some of the senior football people that I was in touch with didn't even know about any of this.
Let's walk down the doomsday scenario, which I think the league won't want to necessarily entertain, but for all leagues right now, it's real, and that there isn't a season. I can't think of a league that is in a worse position to stomach that than a gate-driven league like the CFL. And maybe the Argos with MLSC behind them in some deeper pockets, or Saskatchewan, who has been able to turn a profit regularly. Maybe they can, but talk about the Ottawa Red Blacks, who have already asked employees to take less money, or the Edmonton Eskimos, who have already laid off employees. I don't know if they can stomach that. If there are no games, or certainly no games with fans in the stands, what does that do to the league?
Well, I think when you look at the league, you have to look at it in 3 different chunks. You look at Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, Edmonton as one entity. They're the community-run organizations that have the most success at the box office and as a business. And they will hurt the most because they're packing their stands. Again, gate-driven league, selling tickets 2 by 2. They actually sell merchandise, etc. Then you have your Ottawa, your Hamilton, and your Calgary. And depending on however they do in the standings, that's probably how it's going to be reflective on the balance sheet because of their attendance. And then you have Montreal, Toronto, and BC. And the distinction between that first group of the community-run teams and then these 3 teams could not, they're polar opposites. Donnovan, reportedly, the Argos and Alouettes each lost around $10 to $12 million either last season or the season prior. They're in the red, that kind of cake. And what are the biggest expenditures that you have? Player salary, training camp, travel. Well, if you're not going to have a season, you're not going to spend upwards of $8 or $9 million on that. Now, you're not going to get your TV money of around $5 or $6 million a year, but you're also not spending that. So maybe if you don't play games financially, Montreal, Toronto, and BC won't lose as much as they have in the last 2 years, but there's no question it will significantly dent Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, and Edmonton. And in the middle, you have your Hamilton, Calgary, and Ottawa that will definitely be in some kind of deficit.
Yeah, this is fascinating. I think it's a conversation we're going to continue to have. And I actually think, in a way, what happens south of the border, and if they have a quarantined league, and maybe they say, well, we're going to need to expand rosters because a bunch of players are not willing to play in such a scenario or are not necessarily healthy, then we may have some CFL players itching to get out of their contracts because there could be some work down south. This will be a fluid conversation, just the way the COVID conversation's been.
One important thing to bring up here, and I was speaking with a team official, and they said, look, let's say the CFL team official, let's say that the league says, let's go. Let's start this. Let's go to camp early August, middle of August. What, if you talk about players, coaches, staff being around a locker room, being around the field, you're in the neighborhood of 75 to 100 guys per organization. If you do the math, the chances per organization, let alone 9 of them, that somebody in the first few days is going to come down with some kind of symptoms is what? And they're sharing locker rooms, they're sharing showers, they're sharing dorms, they're sharing eating facilities.
Sharing houses.
Sharing houses.
They're sharing houses.
Are you going to shut it all down again? Or what are you going to do?
Yeah, and economics drives a lot of this. And unlike the league to the south, there isn't the economics to bring in a bunch of quick tests and do thermal testing as guys get off a bus or a plane, or just put them up and buy a hotel for 4 months. Those are things that we're not going to see in the CFL. I hope we see some football in the CFL, but we know now that we're not going to see any to at least July. We're going to have this conversation many more times before that. Thanks, Arash.
Amen.